Hi, welcome to the last tea time top tip that is going to be answering the question, why does design take so long? There are lots more reasons than the ones I'm talking about this week, but these are the ones I think are the most common. And the last tip to share with you is a little bit linked to the one I talked about yesterday, and it's all to do with discipline and being disciplined in your design process, not just within yourself in terms of setting aside a time, but in terms of communicating with others and managing stakeholder expectations and just the whole thing around how are you going to work to get this done. So it's important that you follow a process when you're designing training. Although it is a creative thing in essence, having a process allows you to see exactly where you are. It means that you will not waste your time when you do set aside time to work on something. So a couple key things I think need to be highlighted when I'm talking about following a process, and it links back to things I've already mentioned. The first is having that clear session outline, that route through the key big chunks that you're going to cover. When I'm designing training, I will always work sequentially. The reason I work sequentially is I can visualize that session running and I can make links between the different sections so much more easily, and it just flows. If it's easy for me to visualize it running, it's easy for me to write, so I can just write what I'm seeing really. So work sequentially is very, very important when we're designing training. However, just sometimes we're not sure exactly what we're going to do. We know we're going to do some sort of activity there, can't quite picture it at the moment. That's okay, you can come back to bits. We can leave small holes in what we're writing and come back to them. But what we shouldn't do is leave great big holes. If you decide to start after lunch on the second day or something like that, you don't really know what's gone beforehand. So by the time you fill in all of that, you're going to have to revisit that bit anyway, because you may have brought something forward or you may not have made a link that you thought you were going to make. It just creates a whole bigger editing piece for you. If we have that detailed outline, the other thing that you can do is, if your brain isn't in it or you are struggling to set aside big chunks of time, you can just do a section. So you may say, well, we're going to spend 1 hour talking about topic X. And if you're limited for time or your brain's not quite in it, say, well, I'm just going to write that section today. And that's it. Once that's done, that's progress and it's done, rather than seeing the whole thing that you have to do. There's an advert on the radio at the moment about a boy who struggled to do maths, and it's really struck with me because we sometimes see things as one big problem, whereas really it's just a whole load of little problems. And that's a great way to look at your training design. You haven't got to design a whole event, just design a section, and before you know it, you've done the whole event. And the other thing I would like to say about being disciplined and having a process is, unless you're designing purely for yourself and there's no one else involved, you need to be clear about the role of the stakeholders and when their input is required and in what format. This is something you need to set up beforehand. So being clear about the stages of the design, when people can have an input, when the sign-off points are, and any deadlines associated with that. Because if you've got stakeholders just doing what they want when they want, you can end up amending a piece of training design 6 or 7 times. And you can even end up amending the amends, which is no good to anybody. And that can really eat your time. It can take you just as long to edit something as it can for you to design it in the first place. So that's my final big answer as to the question, why does it take so long to design training? I know there are more reasons why it takes longer than it should, but I thought I'd stop at 5, and I may decide to continue these top tips, do a handful more before the end of the year, answering some of those questions that we touched on in the poll as to what you struggle with. But as I've said before, this appears every week in the VIP Training Designers Club. It's certainly not something I'm going to be continuing long term here. But that was such an important question. I did want to answer it, and I hope you found it useful. Until next tip, or until you comment in the group to say, well, what other things cause you to find that training takes too long, I would love to hear from you. Until next time, thanks very much. Bye now.